welcome to the 49ers First and 10 podcast. 10 minutes of the most up-to-date 49ers news first thing in the morning. I'm your host, Brianna McDonald. I'm joined by 49ers team reporter Lindsay Polares and a special guest, Matt Maiocco from NBC Sports Bay Area. Matt, thanks for joining us again. How excited are you for the upcoming NFL draft?
Yeah, I'm excited just to get it over with. I mean, like, yeah, we read all these mock drafts, and I know there are some great mock drafts, including one perhaps from someone on this interview session.
Are you
Uh,
talking about your own mock
no,
draft?
I'm talking about you, Lindsay. I'm talking about you. So there are great mock drafts, but like we don't know. Well, Lindsay might, but we
I
don't.
don't. I don't know.
When she's in the draft room, she's like looking behind the curtain. She's doing all that stuff that we don't have access to. But when the time comes, generally speaking, especially when a team is picking like the 49ers are at 31 and they have that option of moving up or moving back or whatever, but nobody really knows what a team is thinking until they turn that card in.
Exactly. Well, to start us off today, we've got some roster news for you. The 49ers have signed wide receiver Trent Taylor to a one-year deal yesterday on Tuesday. Lindsay, could you fill us in on this move?
Yeah, so this was one that I think was very well received by, I think, social media, the fans, even, I think, media members. I was not here to really know the root of this reference, but bringing back Trent Taylor reinstates quality time with George Kittle and Trent Taylor, who were original fifth-round picks of the 2017 draft. Matt, I'm hoping you can fill us in, but I think just speaking to his skill set, Trent Taylor, wide receiver, but also has extensive experience at the punt returner position, which is actually a position of need for the 49ers, who did see Ray McCloud head over to the Atlanta Falcons in free agency. But yeah, Matt, why don't you tell us about what quality time is? Because got a little glimpse of that on our 49ers social media channels. But basically, it seems like George Kittle, Trent Taylor really vibe. There's a little Batman skit that you can find on Instagram that I really recommend everybody watch.
Well, yeah, he was part of that original draft class, the original John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan draft class. And he was one of those guys that just kind of really fit into the locker room and very popular guy. And if you look at his stats from year one, he was a really productive player as a slot receiver. And I'm not sure the 49ers have really ever had a true slot receiver in that fashion since Trent Taylor. In fact, if you look at his numbers year one and compare them with George Kittle, they're right there. They're very similar. And Trent Taylor was a guy that there was a lot of promise for. Like, man, is he going to just build on this and become a guy like Wes Welker was the receivers coach back then? Is he going to be another Wes Welker? And then he had some injuries, and it just never took off. And one full season was basically just eliminated from him for him because of a foot injury and then subsequent surgeries. But through it, after he left the 49ers, he's never really established himself as that slot receiver that everybody thought he might be when he broke into the NFL. But what he has done, as Lindsay alluded to, he's shown himself to be a very reliable punt returner. And so I think what John Lynch has done during this first 5 weeks of the new league year is that they go into the draft with really no glaring need. I mean, maybe they still need a nickel back, and yes, they still need a nickel back, but they also have Diomeder Lenore who can play nickel, and they have some guys now on the outside with Isaac Yadam who can be the outside corner, a position where they struggled at last year when Diomeder Lenore slid inside the nickel. So they really are working from a position of strength as this draft approaches, because there's not one, oh my gosh, they have to take a player at this position. A lot of positions they want to hit on, no doubt about it, but there's no like dire need of this spot needs to be filled.
Well, there have been plenty of roster moves during this offseason. And Lindsay, you and I have been trying to keep track of every single one. And as soon as they become official, reporting them here to First and 10. But as you look at the roster and where it stands, what are some of the biggest changes that have been made since the end of the 2023 season?
Yeah, I wish we could show everybody the list because it's so extensive. And obviously, you have that with every team. I will say, just like Matt said, there have been themes that have arisen as the roster signings have happened. I think definitely you point to a revamped defensive line. You saw some players leave in free agency. I'm talking Javon Kinlaw. Eric Armstead was eventually released, signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars. But you bring in guys like Malik Collins, Jordan Elliott. There's just new talent on that defensive front. And then there's been, some additions made to the linebacker core as well, especially with Dre Greenlaw coming back from a season-ending injury that he suffered in the Super Bowl. So he's got a recovery process ahead of him. And then we also saw some new talent added to the secondary. Like you mentioned, we just had a recent signing of a safety, Rock Yassin. And then we also had Chase Lucas get added, Isaac Yadam. There's a lot of new faces, I would say, primarily on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, there's also a new quarterback in Josh Dobbs, rounding out the quarterback trio with Sam Darnold going to the Minnesota Vikings. So like Matt said, I think the 49ers did a really good job of making sure that heading into the draft, they're fully stocked. So now all the new faces, the fresh talent, this next generation of NFL players is only going to help add to a very, very strong 49ers roster.
And with free agency sort of on the back burner, those moves kind of give outsiders a clue onto what moves the 49ers might make in the NFL draft. But Matt, you said it, there's no glaring positions of need for the team in the upcoming draft, but what are some positions the team might be able to hit during their entire draft schedule?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at it, when I say there's no glaring positions of need, and I'm basically talking really about this season. Now, what the 49ers have always tried to do is look ahead and project their needs a year out. And so, yeah, I mean, there's an opportunity for an offensive lineman to come in and start year one, no doubt about it. But more than likely, definitely year two. And it might be multiple guys when you think about, positions where guys are coming up on new contracts or whatnot. So, I would start there, I guess, with offensive line would be a spot that would appear to set up well, very much in play with that first pick at number 31 overall. And like I said, I mean, if they like somebody, if there's two offensive linemen they really like and they're, whatever, 3 picks away, they can go up and get one of those guys. The same can be said for cornerback. And, they don't need a starter. If everybody's healthy, they got a pretty good group of starting cornerbacks when you're talking about Charvarius Ward and Diamador Lenore. But you know what? Both of those guys are on the final year of their contract. And I don't know that they can re-sign both of them. Obviously, they'd love to, but can they? I don't know that. So they have to make that plan to maybe get a cornerback who, has the ability to be a nickel this year, but is ultimately kind of earmarked to be a long-term starter. So those would be two positions. Wide receiver, they need more there. Tight end, they went after Brock Wright from the Lions as a restricted free agent. The Lions matched that offer sheet. So that gives you the signal right there that they're in the market for a tight end who can be a backup to George Kittle and maybe even later on a starter. So those are some of the positions there. They don't have a glaring need, but they have a lot of needs. They have a lot of positions where they can fill, and there aren't too many spots that would be completely off the table for them to pick, in the first day or second day of the draft.
With the draft on the horizon, Lindsay, you published Mock Draft Monday 3.0 earlier this week. Have any new trends emerged or any moves that caught your eye?
I think we've refined the needs down. I think based on draft experts, Matt. So I'm not making these mock draft things, but I'm compiling
So disappointing.
from all the draft experts around the league.
I want you to make them. I want you to make the picks.
That'll be 4.0, so it's coming. I'll put my own mock draft predictions in there. I think we've seen really offensive line, quarterback, and wide receiver through these first few weeks of the mock draft stuff. And I saw it condensed down to really offensive tackle and cornerback specifically. I have seen Patrick Paul, a tackle out of Houston. Jordan Morgan is one name that has been projected for the 49ers week after week. He's a tackle out of Arizona. Then you've got Kool-Aid McKinstry, the cornerback, and then Max Melton, a cornerback out of Rutgers as well. Trying to look here. And then we've got TJ Tampa out of Iowa State. Tyler Guyton, an offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. So I think those are guys that are projected either in the first or second round for the 49ers. So that's kind of where all the experts are narrowing down. I wouldn't be surprised based exactly by what you were saying, just in terms of getting some cornerback depth, especially with contracts expiring, and you never know how that stuff goes. And on offensive tackle, I think you always just need depth on that line. I think that I always point back to the example of the Christmas Day game against the Ravens, where the 49ers really just needed a few extra bodies there. So none of those picks would be the wrong pick.
And Matt, you've been on First and 10 before. During the season, you shared some bold predictions for some games during the season. Do you have a bold prediction or a hot take for day one of the NFL draft?
Well, I don't know about for day one. Here's my bold prediction. The 49ers will trade that fourth round selection, number 124, that they got from the Dallas Cowboys. They will use it somehow to trade up. It might be in the first round where they use that pick and trade up, but I guarantee you they will trade that pick. And I'll tell you why.
I want to know why.
Yes. That is the pick they acquired in the trade with the Dallas Cowboys for Trey Lance. And so teams don't ever like there to be like this very much of a connect the dots, like, oh, the 49ers ended up getting this specific player for Trey Lance. So they're going to use that pick. They're going to trade up. They're going to trade back. There's going to be some maneuvering, but they will use that pick to move up and get the offensive lineman that they so covet.
All right, well, we'll just have to see, but that will do it for today's episode. Thank you so much, Lindsay and Matt, for joining me today. Faithful, don't forget to subscribe to First and 10 on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Turn on those notifications, and thank you for tuning in.